Hello, my name is Paige Johnson, and I'd like to talk to you about some of the new exciting features in Creative Studio version 6. I'd like to talk about the nodes. The nodes within the pattern are one of my favorite features. Nodes replace pattern divide. We can still divide patterns, but the new nodes feature give us so much more freedom to fine-tune our patterns. To help showcase this feature, I'm going to be providing you with a project. This is a project that you can use on your SAM, your standalone mode, and it will help you become familiar with and comfortable with all the new nodes. In this project, we're going to work with some calligraphy letters that were put on the Statler. Actually, I received mine when I still had precision stitch. Kim Diamond is the one who so graciously made these available for us. I'm going to be showing you how to use all the new node features by altering these letters, and then I'm going to be using those letters in a different project to make banners. Things that you can use every day or for special occasions. Let's start by pulling in the patterns. I'm going to go into my patterns that I received with precision stitch, and I'm going to be taking the calligraphy alphabet, and they all look pretty good, but I think we can make some changes and have some fun along the way. So I'm going to load every single one of these letters into my project. So I have all of my patterns in here, and as I look at them, you'll notice in the designer properties, note the pattern height and width. They are coming in at all different numbers. I want these letters to be fairly consistent so that I can use them over and over again in a project. I'm also going to give them the ability to be placed using point to point. We're going to do that in this project. Because I want to make them all very similar, I want to start with an area in which to draw those patterns. So I'm going to start with my square, and I'm going to place one of those on the screen using repeat pattern. Now before we go there, let's talk about where the patterns land on your screen when you use repeat pattern. See the little purple line? That is your point of origin, this dot here. And that point of origin is going to determine where your patterns land. Now once I go into repeat pattern, I will note that my pattern location says center. That means all of my patterns, when placed on the screen using repeat pattern, are going to land centering the pattern on the center of my point of origin. How you change this is in Tools, Technical Support, Controller Definitions. I want my reference point to be center. That way we know all of the letters are coming in the same aspect. So let's start with my square repeat patterns, and I have found that it's easier to deal with a pattern when it's larger. I don't believe I'm going to need an 8-inch letter, but I might. So let's go in and make my square 8 inches. My freeze aspect is on. I've changed the width. As soon as I hit enter, my height will change accordingly. Now I can place this on the screen. That is the area in which I want to build my letters. So I'm going to take this, because I don't want it to be a pattern, right click and convert this pattern into a boundary. Now I can place letters over it, and it's not a pattern that's going to be bothering me. So let's start with a basic letter. Let's try E. I like the letter E. I'm going to place one on the screen. One thing I might want to do is make sure that they are all coming to the same area. My grid is set at 1 inch, and I'm going to make all of my letters line up along these 1-inch lines. So with orange handles, I can double click, I can pull the square and make this letter come out to my edges here. I can see that this is off a little bit right here. It's extending out of where I want. So I'll move that in. Okay, this looks good, but if I want all of my letters to be similar, let's take the bottom out to the edge as well. This is where we're going to start to work with the nodes. If I right click, there is a nodes button here, and you'll notice that we've got the very familiar pink nodes, and those are the ends of the sections within the pattern if you clicked a 3-point arc. The other thing we have are blue nodes. Now I can move this pink node, and notice how I'm just stretching that pattern. I can move it out to the edge. Let's take this node. Nodes still are affected by snaps. I can put my grid snap on, and this node will snap to that grid. That way I know I've got a straight line along the bottom. Let's take that grid snap off. And now I can adjust the arc of this outside segment by pulling on the blue nodes. We can move this one so it's off a little bit. Let's move this one out a little bit. And then I can look at the curvature here. I think this curvature might need to come in a little bit. This node can go out. If I hit escape, the node feature goes away and I can see that line. Let's go back into nodes. F7 on the keyboard will give you nodes again. I'm going to smooth out this line a little bit. So once I have a letter that I like, and I'm just making some very small adjustments here, I can make sure all of my other letters are going to be like this one. Let's pull that up so that that is a little straight. Okay, up here, those two should probably be level. I'm going to take this one down a little bit. Escape will allow me to see that line. Another way to find your node button is to go over to the pink and blue nodes on the side of your screen. I think I want that to flatten out just a little bit. When you're happy with your pattern, we can still export that pattern as a CSQ. Now, if I want to make another letter that looks like this one, let's take that pattern and convert it into a boundary. Now I can go down and find another letter. Let's see, F is very similar to the E, so let's try that F. I'm going to place it on the screen with repeat patterns. Now the reason I don't use pattern to boundary is because I want to be able to make sure that they're all put in with the center in the center. And you can see here that this one is not the size I want, so I'm going to move it down so that the lines go where I want them. We still have the other handles, F9 or purple handles. Notice here how the top of the F really isn't anything like my E. I can change that. Let's go into nodes. Because I have that boundary there, I can start to pull those nodes right over. Now I start by moving the pink ones and then using the blues to pull the line where I want it. Let's pull this one out here. So you can see by using these nodes, I really can fit the lines exactly where I want. This is so much fun. Right here, between these two pink nodes, there are no blue nodes. That means it's a line, not a curve. So I'm going to want to pull that one closer in using the blue nodes. You can see how I can literally change these lines, making everything come to the same point. Let's move this one out here. Because there are no nodes, I know that's a straight line. I need a node in here. Because the segment between these two nodes was a straight line, I don't have the option to put that arc in there. What I can do is make an arc in there later. Let's line up all the other nodes that I can, and we'll come back to that feature, because that's going to give us one more fun thing to play with. Line up all my nodes. Now here I'm making my F do something different than the E. I may want to go back and change my E, or I might not. It's all up to you. Okay, here's a tricky point. See where the start and end are on this node? They're separate. So I can move them. There is a gap in there. I want to make certain that when sewing, that those two will come back together. So I want to make sure that these two nodes are right on top of each other. I'm going to scroll way in. The pattern is going to stop and start there. Let's pull this node in. This one. Move the pink first, then adjust with the blue. Okay, I want to see what this looks like. Escape will give me back to a black line. Let's go to nodes. I think I need this a little smoother. That works right there. Let's go back up to here. I want to put an arc in here. So what I'm going to need to do is divide this pattern at this point. To divide at this point, I'm going to go over that node. You can tell I'm on the node because my cursor turned from an arrow to an X. If I right click, I can hit divide. Now I have two separate nodes. This node can then be moved up to here, and I need to create a pattern between these nodes. I'm going to go Alt plus A to draw a point-to-point arc. I want my E on. My first click is on the node. It's snapping. My second click is there, and then it snaps again. Now this is a separate pattern. If I use my greater than and less than keys, I toggle through that pattern. F7. Let's move this down here. Change that. So now I've got a nice arc. This is not connected. With my E on, hear that snap? I can then connect that end. But let's take a look at our sewing order, shall we? F8 gives us sewing order. It's going to start here, and my new segment is off because it was added last. So what I can do is use another new feature, escape. If I select my first segment and right click, I can do an order join. That is going to bring all of those nodes that are within a stitch, or if they're connected, into the right order and direction. Let's take a look. F8. So now I've got 0, 1, and 2. That is all sewing in the correct direction. Let's escape out of this. So now I've got a pattern that I like, and it's going to be compatible with the other letters that I have in this alphabet. If I wanted to, I could go back and change that E to have the same tail that the F did. Let's take that F pattern and export it, saving it with our other letters. Let's try another letter. How about the letter T? The letter T is going to be closer to my F than it is to the E. So let's get rid of the E boundary. It is red. Nothing else on my screen is highlighted. I can hit delete, and I can change my F. Oh, it's all separate patterns. Let's combine them. Combine those patterns. Now I can convert this pattern into a boundary. Let's put the letter T on over this boundary. Okay, there's my letter T, And I'm going to use my handles to move this pattern close to this. Okay, I think I'm within the same size limits. Oh, that guy is up a little bit. Okay, now I can start to change this letter. Let's go into nodes. Let's move this up, up. Actually, I don't think I need that end up there. Let's go to here. Do that handle here. I want to snap this node to this grid point. I'm going to snap the grid. Now, this is something I want to caution you about. If I start to move a blue node and I have a pink dot, or notice that I have my grid snap on, that node is going to snap to the closest grid as well. You can snap to a grid or to an end, whether it's pink or blue. Make sure you know which one is on, because you may not want to be snapping your blue nodes to the same spot you're snapping your pink ones. This exercise will give you a good indication of how the lines are moved and how they change. It's all just practice. And what a fun thing to practice and play with. Okay, escape, let's see. Well, let's take a look at this without the F boundary underneath. I want to remove that boundary. L will toggle you through your boundaries. If the boundary is red and nothing else on the screen is highlighted, you can hit your delete key and that boundary will go away. Let's go into nodes again. I can use the icon on the side of the screen. And I'm thinking these points are not parallel. I think that's a little bit better right there. You can tweak forever on these things, but it is fun to play with. Okay, there's my letter T. Now, I had said that I wanted to make my letters be available to put in placement-wise with a point-to-point. A point-to-point pattern, in order to be valid, needs to fulfill certain criteria. Number one, the start needs to be on the left-hand side of the pattern and the stop on the right-hand side of the pattern. The other criteria is the start and the stop need to be on the same horizontal plane. If we look at our letter T, we notice that it stops and ends in the exact same position. It is not starting on the left and ending on the right. So we're going to have to add some points in that would be the beginning of the pattern and the end of the pattern. These pattern segments have to be extremely small. Statler will recognize the start of a pattern, but will not stitch a pattern that is under a 1 stitch length. I'm going to put in some very small pattern segments. Alt plus L. I want my grid snap on, and I've got 2 lines here. Let's take that grid snap off. When I select my line, F11, so that I can move it, I'm just going to move this down. Let's scroll way in. I want this to be less than 1 stitch. You can see over here my line segment is 0.001. Let's take that down. If I can get that down to 0 and I can still say a line, I'm happy. Let's go to the other side. See the world. I'm going to move this one, 0.11. I'm going to move that down again, 0.01. I've got my pattern width down to 0. I'm happy with that. Let's see the world. I need to change my sewing order. F8. I want to start here, do my letter, and end over here. Now this is a point-to-point pattern, F8. There is going to be a jump stitch involved. Let's select all of the patterns on the screen, right-click, and combine those patterns. Now it is all one pattern. When I go into F7, you'll notice that I have a jump stitch here between these two patterns. It is a blue line, not a pink one. The pink line is sewable. The blue line is a jump stitch. So I can export this pattern, and this time I'm going to say it's a point-to-point letter T. I know it's a point-to-point pattern. I always like to test them. If I go into point-to-point, draw a point-to-point pattern comes up on my screen. I'm in my SAM. Then I can click my point-to-point, and my letter T will fall in. These letters will not sew continuously because of that jump stitch, but the point-to-point is perfect for placement. I've changed all of these letters and adapted them so that they could be used as a point-to-point, and then I can use those same letters in other projects. This is a perfect way to practice moving those nodes around and realizing what happens when you move the pink and the blue. Try it. I think you'll like it.